So Act 4. So the king and queen are with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And remember, Queen's already talked to Hamlet, and he told her all the stuff that was going on, and he's like, you have to stay away. But she's still, of course, horrified. Um, and then the king asks her what's going on, and she's just like, my gosh, he is insane. And he killed, he hears some screaming. He says, a rat, a rat. And he kills Polonius. Well, now the king is freaked out because he knows, he even says, had it been so with us, had we been there, in other words, had we been the ones behind, had I been behind the screen, he's speaking in the king's we, he would have killed me. And he knows it. So this guy is a loose cannon. He's going to make a mess. He's already killed, Polonius. We got to get rid of him. Where is he gone? And she goes, I don't know. He took the body. And it says he weeps for what is done. So he's mourning that it happened. He's upset that he's killed Polonius. But of course that doesn't make the king feel any better, because it could be that he's still, again, who does he intend to kill? Claudius is the one who feels like he's being threatened. So then he says to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, we got to get him, and then we need to take him, find the body, and then we need to go get rid of this man. Okay. And Claudius is afraid. So then they finally do find Hamlet. They figure out where he put the body. And then the king comes, but he admits to some of his courtiers, not Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, they don't know, but he essentially say, I have to send him away. So we will cover all this stuff up. We'll give Polonius a really good burial and everything, but we have to get rid of Hamlet. He has to leave. Okay. And Rosencrantz comes in, says, we found the body. And Polonius, then the king talks to Hamlet, and Hamlet sounds like a mad person. He jokes about the body. He sounds like he's deranged. But the king is like, he essentially tells him, look, we need to keep you safe, Hamlet. So we must send you to England. Okay, the boat's ready. So let's go, and we'll send you for England. And Hamlet already knew through the grapevine. He already knew that he was going to be sent to England with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But the king says, oh, we have to protect you, Hamlet. So we're going to send you to England. He goes, okay, well, I'll go to England. Farewell, dear mother. And he says that to the king. The king's like, thy loving father, Hamlet. And he goes, whatever. And he goes to England. And the king is not, he says, I'll have him hence tonight. He wants him gone, gone, gone. But then, and everybody leaves, but then he tells us, the audience, he's the only one on here. He essentially says, I've written a letter through letters. Essentially, once he gets to England, he says, England has instructions to kill Hamlet. Do it, England. Remember, he doesn't want to kill him himself, but you're going to cure me of this problem. And so Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have sealed letters in their custody. They haven't read them. They don't know what they are, but they have sealed letters to get Hamlet killed. The moment he gets off, he's going to hand the letters to the officials. They're going to read the letters, and they're going to kill Hamlet. And that's so that Claudius doesn't have to deal with him anymore. So he's intending Hamlet to die. Now, Fortinbras, we get this very brief scene where Fortinbras is essentially sending somebody off in greetings to the king, saying, okay, we're going to go through here. And he actually comes across Hamlet, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and all these people. And Hamlet they don't speak to each other. Okay, but the captain speaks both to Fortinbras, who's, traveling through, and then he speaks to Hamlet. And so it's, Hamlet knows that there's something up with that, but he's not going to play around. He's like, okay, well, we'll see what happens with Fortinbras. And he seems to respect him, and I think he would probably have dealt with Fortinbras in a different way than Claudius did. But he goes, he goes essentially, he knows he's going to England, and he goes, this is not, all occasions do inform against me and spur my dull revenge. And he's like, this is not good. I don't have a choice. I have to leave, but I am determined to take care of this problem. Okay. Yes, I did kill Polonius and all that stuff, but I'm going to, I have to do something. My honor is at stake. How stand I then that have a father killed, a mother stained, excitements of my reason and my blood, and let all sleep? While to my shame, I see the imminent death of 20,000. So it's, in other words, he doesn't like the idea of war either. And so he says, oh, from this time forth, he says, this guy can go with absolute assurance, Fortinbras can, and go and know that he's going to cause the death of thousands of people. And yet I can't manage to kill a single person. Well, not the right one anyway. So then we get to scene 5. So Hamlet's gone to England, probably to his death, we think. Remember, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have letters that effectively say this. Well, the queen is talking now to Horatio and a gentleman, and she's like, I don't want to speak with her. Well, this is Ophelia. So remember, Ophelia was in love with Hamlet, thought Hamlet was in love with her, which he probably was. Polonius is her father, though, and he is killed by Hamlet. And so what has Ophelia done? She's gone off the deep end for real. So she's lost her little mind. And so we have Ophelia's madness scene, and she sings a bunch of songs, all of them about giving herself away before marriage, and then the person is unfaithful. And some of them are pretty bawdy, but essentially, I loved a boy and we had relationship together, but now he's gone. Well, where is he now? He's dead and gone, lady. He's dead and gone. At his head, a grass green turf, at his heels, a stone. And she can't really tell, and it's really mixed up. What is she mourning, her father, or is she mourning her loss of Hamlet? And the truth is she's probably dealing with both, but it's just sent her off the deep end. She was, completely dependent on her father. And so to have not only your father die that you were dependent on, for everything, but then to have Hamlet be the one who did it. And a lot of people would contend that she and Hamlet had to have had some sort of relationship because of the way she's talking. All of these things are talking, then up he rose and donned his clothes. So she came in, I am made at your window to be your Valentine. Then up he rose and donned his clothes and upped the chamber door, let in the maid, that out a maid departed nevermore. So here came this girl who was a maid, she was a virgin, but then the next day when she left, she was no longer a virgin. And then it says, before you tumbled me, you promised me to wed. So I would have done by yonder sun if thou hadst not come to my bed. And so again, this is a suggestion that they had a relationship and it was sexual. And so she's perhaps even more in love with Hamlet than anybody thought, and Hamlet may be more in love with her than. But he has no recourse. What is he supposed to do? He's gone to England by force. He has no choice, and so she feels utterly abandoned. Her dad's dead. Laertes is gone, and she's kind of lost her mind. And so that's what all of this is. It's kind of going through all of this, and then the messenger comes in and says Laertes is coming, and he has a whole bunch of people, all these rioters, and they're calling him Lord. And as the world were now but to begin, essentially, who cares if you were king? They're saying they want Laertes to be king because of the death of Polonius. They see it as a wrongful death, and so they want to essentially overthrow the king and put Laertes on the throne. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so unloyal. That's what the queen is all upset. But the truth is the Denmark in general does not like the king. And here comes Laertes probably with his sword drawn, and he's ready. He's spitting mad. So he's like, he's the angry person who does things very rashly. That's Laertes. He's not Hamlet. Hamlet does get angry, but he tries to think through and think, okay, what is the right method to go through this? How do I, take the steps I need to take and do it the right way. Laertes has no thought of what's the right way. He comes in with sword drawn, at least most of the versions I've seen, he does. And he leaves the crowd behind him for a second. And he says, "Oh, thou vile king, give me my father." And he just treats the king like that. He says, addresses him completely. And the king is like, "Why are you so upset?" And he says, "Well, what's your cause? Why are you so rebellious?" And Gertrude's trying to hold him back. He goes, "Don't worry, he won't do anything to me." And he says, "Tell me, Laertes, why art thou thus incensed?" And he goes, "Where's my father?" And the king says, "Dead." And the queen says, "But not by him." In other words, but King Claudius didn't do it. And he goes, "Well, how did he become dead?" And what does the king tell him? "Oh, we'll see, it was Hamlet." Would you do things, once I tell you the truth, will you do things to help me, because we need to take care of what's wrong? And he goes, "Absolutely." He goes, "Okay, I was a friend of your father. I would never have wanted him to die. I am guiltless of your father's death," is what the king tells him. "And I'm very much grieving for your father." Probably about as much as he grieved for his brother. And as he's saying all this, he goes, "Don't worry." He goes, "I never did anything to your father. I would never have hurt your father." And then Ophelia comes in and she's insane. Doesn't recognize her brother. She's usually, they have her in this kind of white hospital gown. She looks awful. And he's like, "Why in the world does my sister look like this?" And well, she's kind of gone insane. And oh my gosh, she's gone completely insane. And he's upset. That makes him even more upset, because he sees her in her madness. And he goes, "Laertes," and he even says, "Do you see this? Oh God." He's so upset by what he sees in Ophelia. And the king says, "We must commune with your grief, but let's talk, okay?" And he says, if what we tell you doesn't satisfy you, we will our kingdom give, our crown, our life, and all that we call ours, to make you satisfied. Okay. So now, will he really? No. He's just going to try to placate him so that he's no longer a danger. And he goes, his means of death, his obscure funeral. Laertes is understandably upset. What's so funny is, so was Hamlet. And yet, what's the king saying to Laertes? "It's totally understandable that you're upset, but let me see what I can do to help you and satisfy you." For Hamlet, he's like, "Why are you so upset? Aren't you happy for us because we got married?" There's an absolute double standard. Just like, "Oh, you can go back to France and go to school," but Hamlet, "No, you need to stay here." Okay. But he's doing this because he's going to manipulate Laertes into being an ally. And he knows he can. Laertes doesn't think through things. And so he will be easier to manipulate than Hamlet is. Okay, so then Horatio comes in. This is scene 6, and he's like, "What is going on?" And essentially they say, "Well, we have these sailors. They're really pirates, but we have a person with a letter, and he sent a letter through them to you to see if they can help you. It's from it was essentially a boat that was bound for England. If your name is Horatio, that is true." He goes, "Yeah, yeah." And essentially, the Horatio reads the letters, and he says, "I was, the boat was taken by pirates, and I escaped on the pirate ship, and so that's where I am now. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are off to England, still in the boat. But I'll tell you more of that soon." And so we know Hamlet is no longer on the boat to England, and so that means he did not get murdered once he got to England. And that's really important, because the king wanted him murdered, and he would have had the England do it, but Hamlet, because of the pirates coming and attacking, thank goodness, he did not get murdered. He didn't even go all the way to England. He was only gone a few days, and then he's coming back. Okay, but in that time, of course, Laertes comes back. And so the next scene, though, the king and Laertes pretty much make it clear that they're going to be allied together. Laertes believes what the king told him. So even that idea that Hamlet killed Laertes, he doesn't say, I mean, killed Polonius. The king doesn't say why. But we had to cover it up a little bit because of Hamlet. Why? Because the queen loves him. And he says, and I couldn't make her unhappy. Okay. The other motive is because the public likes Hamlet. If I did something to punish Hamlet, they would not. He's very popular among the Danish people, which is funny because Claudius is not. People don't trust Claudius. They liked the first king, Hamlet, and they, in some ways, probably would prefer to have the young Hamlet be king as opposed to Claudius. And Laertes is like, well, that's not satisfactory because, okay, my dad's dead, and now Ophelia's insane, and it's all Hamlet's fault. He blames Hamlet for all of it. And he says, but my revenge will come. He's going to have revenge on Hamlet. And the king's like, that's okay. We will guide you with this. And this is where we find out, essentially, that it did not happen the way that they had hoped. So it's actually a letter from Hamlet. He says, high and mighty, you shall know I'm set naked on your kingdom. Tomorrow I shall beg leave to see your kingly eyes, when I shall first asking your pardon, thereunto recount the occasion of my sudden and more strange return, Hamlet. And the king's like, what? What should all this mean? Or is everyone coming back? And he goes, that's Hamlet. But he says he's coming back alone. And Laertes are like, none of that makes any sense. But the king knows now Hamlet didn't go to England and die. So the king he says, okay, you want revenge? This is what we're going to do, okay? And he plans it all right. He hasn't even seen Hamlet again. But this is what we're going to do, okay? We've talked about you a lot, okay? And we think that there's some envy in Hamlet for you because we praise you so much, okay? And so we think we can do something, okay? So this is what he essentially says. He goes, what we're going to do, let's see, let's scoot to where, yeah. So what he's going to do is he says, let's do a duel. Only what we're going to do is we're going to put venom, we're going to put poison on his sword. Now he's suggesting it at this point. Laertes is like, okay, what does that mean? And he goes, was your father dear to you? Or are you a face without a heart? And he goes, why do you ask this? Because of course I love my father. And he goes, okay, I think you did love your father. Okay, but he's dead. So what would you do to essentially avenge him? And he says, Hamlet comes back. What would you be willing to do to show yourself indeed your father's son? And he says, I'd cut his throat in the church. So I would slaughter him inside the sanctuary and bring all sorts of sin upon me to avenge my father. I'd do anything, is what he's saying. He goes, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start, when Hamlet comes back, we're going to praise your excellence and talk about how amazing you are. And then we're going to place a wager on you that you're going to essentially fight with foils. So, the rapiers, the little fencing swords. And we're going to fight with foils, and he's going to, because of all the manipulation we're going to do, he's going to go, okay, we'll totally do a duel. Okay. But you're going to choose a sword that's unbaited. So it's not going to have a little tip on the end so that you can't cut somebody up. And what we're going to do, we're going to essentially revenge your father by doing this. So his sword will be baited so he can't hurt you, but you can stab him with your rapier. And he goes, well, even better, I have a poison I'm going to put on that sword so that even if he just gets a scratch, it'll kill him. I'll touch my point with this contagion that if I gall him slightly, it will be death. Okay. He goes, good. Okay. So they have a plan. They're already planning to kill him again. The queen comes in. She doesn't know this, or she doesn't find out. She doesn't know what they're planning. If this is just Laertes and the king, remember, because Laertes wants a vengeance against his father for his father's death. So he's like the Hamlet too. But only he's all action, impetuous action, and Hamlet isn't. So, but just as at this point, the queen runs in. She goes, "Oh my gosh, your sister's drowned, Laertes." And she essentially went into the brook and waited until the brook took all of, soaked into her clothing and pulled her under, and she drowned. So Ophelia dies. And this is only going to make Laertes more upset and more ready to kill Hamlet, because again, he sees it as Hamlet's fault that Ophelia has gone mad. Now we get to the grave scene. This is a big scene. I mean, don't worry too much about the alas, poor Yorick. He's, I knew him, Horatio, and stuff like that, but the gravedigger does talk about essentially, he's joking about it. It's where we get the term graveyard humor, that you have to joke about death if you're surrounded by it all the time. But then Hamlet comes by and he's with Horatio. And they joke about it a little bit, but Hamlet takes death seriously because of his father's death and what needs to happen. Okay. And so, but he doesn't know, the gravedigger's just digging up another grave for somebody who's died. And he's like, well, who died? He goes, a person, somebody who died. Who cares? Once he's dead, doesn't matter who he was. And so the gravedigger never tells him. So Hamlet doesn't know until here comes essentially the funeral procession comes. And that's, let's see, that's the alas, poor Yorick. And here comes the king and queen. And he's like, what? Why would the king and queen and courtiers come to a funeral? Who is it? So it has to be somebody. And yet the rites are very simple. So there's hardly any rites given to the person who's being buried in the ground. So they put the body in the ground, and yet there's very little fanfare. And he says this doth betoken that the corpse, the dead person, did with desperate hand fordo his own life. So this is a suicide. And again, this is very Catholic thinking, because a suicide cannot be, the person can't go to heaven because they could not be cleansed of their own sin before they died, because they killed themselves. And so this has to have been, and they were even buried either, if they were even given a Christian burial, it was in a different part of the graveyard. And often they were not allowed a Christian burial. And so he goes, so they have the very brief ceremony, but Hamlet recognizes this must have been a suicide. And Laertes asks for more. Like, what other ceremony can we give her? And the doctor's like, I'm sorry, we've already done more than we should because she was a suicide. And Laertes is that's like not fair. And he's angry. Laertes is. And he finally says, he goes, lay her in the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violets spring. In other words, my sister is wonderful. And he says, he goes, a ministering angel shall my sister be. And so Hamlet realizes at that point, with a shock, that that's Ophelia. And he's like, what? The fair Ophelia? And the queen throws some flowers in the grave. And she even says, I hope thou shouldst have been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed to have decked with flowers, in other words, and not have strewed thy grave. And Laertes is so upset. He's like, don't put the earth in, not until I hold her one more time. So he's holding her dead body, which is pretty morose, but it's what it is. And then Hamlet comes in, and he's like, he says, your grief, I understand your grief, but it is nothing to mine. This is I, Hamlet the Dane. And Laertes is going to kill him. Like they start to grapple. They actually start fighting. He says, the devil take thy soul. And he says, I prithee take thy fingers from my throat. So Laertes is going to strangle him right there. And the king has them taken apart. And then he says, I will fight him. Hamlet's mad too. And he goes, why? He goes, I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. What wilt thou do for her? And the king's trying to stop it, but Hamlet's kind of egging him on because he's devastated. And he says, nothing that you can mourn, I won't mourn at least as much. And the queen, everybody thinks that he's just mad, but, and he said, and you know, the Laertes is all mad, but he goes, what is the reason that you used me thus? I loved you ever. Like, I've always been your friend, Laertes, but it's no matter. It doesn't matter. And he runs off. And so Laertes is just like, oh, we are going to kill that guy. He is so furiously mad. So the truth is all from this point on, we're almost to climax level, not quite, but we're essentially going. He hands him a paper, and it's about the he's showing them the letter that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern had been given by Claudius to have him killed. He says, so he went in, snuck into Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's rooms, found this sealed writ. And he says it's essentially saying, as you love us, England, you need to kill Hamlet. He should those bearers put, and so essentially he says that's what he wrote. So I took the letter out and I wrote a new piece of paper and put it back in the envelope, resealed it, and it essentially said exactly the same thing. But as you're my friends and you're my allies, as soon as you get there, as soon as these people bring this letter to you, have them put to death. And so he essentially, you know, he had his father's signet and he resealed the letter, but he changed it from Hamlet to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And so Horatio says, so Guildenstern and Rosencrantz go to it. In other words, they're gonna die. And he says, well, I don't feel bad about it. They were going to take me to my death, even unknowing. They didn't care. They were going to serve my father and do whatever, well, my stepfather, and do whatever he told them, the king, and do whatever he told them, whether it hurt me or not. So I just don't care. But it ended up after he had switched the letters, that's when the pirates came, and he jumped on board to fight the pirates, but he ended up on the pirate ship. The two ships separated and he stayed with the pirates, and then the other ship went off to England. And so that's kind of where it ended. That's how Hamlet got away. Now then Osric comes in and essentially brings up the charge, the duel that they're going to do for sport, in parentheses sport, because it really isn't. Remember, Laertes wants him dead, but Hamlet doesn't know to what extent. Like, he doesn't know that the king and Laertes have already plotted against this. So he says after a while, it takes a bit, but then Osric says, essentially, we're going to use the rapier and the dagger. And that's what they're going to fight with. And then you'll be allowed so many times. And but we'd like to do a duel if you'll say so and say, yes, we'll do it. And he goes, okay, I'll do it. Now, Horatio does not want him to. He says, you don't have to fight this. And he goes, well, no, I feel like, okay, well, we just need to do it. And he says that my feelings follow the king's pleasure. If the king wants me to do this, then I'll do it. And Horatio says, you will lose. And he goes, no, I don't think so. I've been studying. I've been playing swordplay a lot. I've been in continual practice, so I think I'll win. But it doesn't matter if I didn't. It wouldn't matter. And Horatio says, look, think about it. If your mind dislike anything, obey it. Like, pay attention to your misgivings. It's okay to say that you're not fit yet to do the duel. And he goes, no, it's fine. Whatever. If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. In other words, if I don't die now, I'll die later. But I'm ready to die whenever. Since no man of aught he leaves knows, what is it to leave betimes? Like now, let be. So if it's my fate to die now, it's kind of like Beowulf. If it's my fate to die now, then okay, then I'll die now. It's okay, I can do that. Okay, so then, and this is really that choice, the fact that Hamlet does this and chooses, That's really where the climax is. He chooses to be part of this because we know so many things are against him. Okay. And we know we're in trouble. You know, that there are several different things that are stacked against him that are going to make it likely that he could be poisoned and die. Remember, so Laertes has this problem now. So when they get together, they're about to duel, but Hamlet says, "Look, I have done you wrong." And he says very gracious words. He goes, "I'm really sorry. What I have done to you, I here proclaim was madness." And he goes, "I would never have done you wrong if I could." And the truth is, he wouldn't. He would never have killed Polonius. He thought it was the king. He would never have hurt Ophelia if he could have avoided it. He didn't know she was even mad. Remember, he'd been sent off to England. And so all of this stuff happened, and he wishes it had not. And he's not lying. And so Laertes says, "I am satisfied in nature, whose motive in this case should stir me most to my revenge. But in terms of honor, I stand aloof and will no reconcilement till my elder masters of known honor have a voice and precedent of peace." In other words, we're doing this duel because, yes, I understand I accept your apology, sort of, but my honor still needs, we still have to duel for my honor and for the honor of my father and what my connections and the love I had for my father and my sister. And he goes, "Okay." And so I will play honestly, and he will. Hamlet does. Okay. So Hamlet's going to fight this as honestly as but he's the better swordsman. Okay. Hamlet really is better. And so they start to fight, and we're already past the climax where Hamlet says the readiness is all, that he's going, if I die now, then okay, I'll die. But if I die later, then I'll die later. It's almost like he leaves everything up to fate, but he knows he has to act. Okay. He knows he has to take care of Claudius, but he first has to face Laertes, he feels like, and kind of at least satisfy his honor if that's what he's doing. Okay. And Laertes takes a sword and he goes, "This is too heavy. Let me see another." Well, the other sword he takes is one that has no end to it. So it's not, it has a sharp edge at the end of it. So he could actually stab Hamlet with it. Remember, it's already been tainted too with poison. Okay. And then as they're about to fight, the king says, "Get some wine on the table. Here, give me a stoup of wine." So a big like glass of wine. And he says, "If Hamlet give the first or second hit, or quit in answer of the third exchange, let all the battlements, let's celebrate that. And the king shall drink to Hamlet's better breath," in other words, breathing better, calm breath, because it's after the fight. "And in the cup, an union shall we throw." And that the union is actually like a pearl. It often looks like something, some type of gem or something. It's poison. And he says, "So this union shall he throw, richer than that which 4 successive kings in Denmark's crown have worn." So he says, "Give me the cups and I'll make a cup for him." And he plops the jewel in there, the pearl, and when we drink to him, then he will be able to drink some wine as well to celebrate his win. Okay. Hamlet's like, okay. But remember, he's not drinking. But this is poison. So this is like if Laertes doesn't get a shot in, then I can still poison Hamlet. Okay. And then they fight. So they're playing judgment. Osric says a hit, very palpable hit, and that's a hit by Hamlet. So Hamlet says, "I got a hit." Laertes says no. Hamlet says judgment, and Osric says no, that was definitely a hit. And he goes, "Stay, wait a second, have a drink, Hamlet. Hamlet, this pearl is thine. Here's to thy health." He drinks the wine, drops the pearl into the cup, and then hands it to Hamlet. And Hamlet's like, "Well, let me play this bout first." So he doesn't drink the wine. Remember, that would poison him and he'd be dead. Okay. And then they play again. He gets another hit. So remember, this is best of 3. What say you? And Laertes says, "I do confess. He got me." Okay. So that's the second. He only goes to 3 and then Hamlet's done. So Laertes might not get a shot on, right? And if Hamlet doesn't drink the wine, then there's no poison. Okay. So it might not work. You're like, oh, wait, Hamlet might win, right? And The king says, our son shall win. Of course, he doesn't want him to. And she goes, Hamlet, here, take my napkin, rub thy brows. The queen carouses to thy fortune. She lifts up Hamlet's cup of wine. Hamlet says, kind of salutes her back. The king says, Gertrude, do not drink. And the queen says, oh, I will, my lord. I pray you pardon me. Now, there's all sorts of speculation. Did Gertrude know that that was poison? And is that why she's drinking it? So that Hamlet doesn't? Or was she just, there have been ones that make her out to just be a sot. She just loves drinking. There's nothing else in the play that says this. So, or maybe it's that when he says, Gertrude, do not drink, she knows. And I like that better, that she knows her husband is trying to poison her son. She sees it. I love that idea. And then she chooses to drink, knowing it will kill her. And the king, in an aside, that's to us, just to, where nobody can hear him. It's just like a private thought. He says, it's the poison cup. It's too late. In other words, Gertrude is going to die at that point. So this is the final scene. So this is where everything falls into place. I told you it was a very late climax. And Hamlet says, and then he essentially, she has the cup and he's like, well, I don't have to, I'm not going to drink right now. And she says, well, let me wipe your face for a second. And Laertes says, my lord, I'll hit him now. And the king's like, what if you don't win? Like, I don't think you're going to hit him. When we duel, I don't think he's going to get you again. And so Laertes says, it really goes against my conscience. He is already having regrets. Remember, he threw himself into this. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to poison my sword and stuff like that. But he already feels kind of bad about it. And he goes, come on. Hamlet's like, let's go. Third time. And so he says, Laertes is like, come on. And then Osric says, nothing either way. So he's stopped the play. Neither one of you got a touch that time. So they're not even fighting again. And yet Laertes says, have it you now. And he stabs him, usually in the arm or somewhere small. But he wounds him. And it's just a little something. But Hamlet realizes, like, you're going after me when this is not a duel. Like, we're supposed to be done. And we're not supposed to be fighting yet. You're fighting when I'm not even ready, which is so bad sportsmanship. So any place that had been looking at this as a duel would have given the round to Hamlet because Laertes cut in and did this. But then they start fighting. And then in the scuffling, in the fighting with each other, Hamlet ends up with Laertes' sword. And Laertes has Hamlet's sword. And then the king is trying to separate them. And the king is like, let's not have them fight because they're angry with each other. And he goes, no, we're going to keep fighting because Hamlet knows something's up. And that's when the queen falls. And oh my gosh, the queen's fallen. Everybody's like, they bleed on both sides. So essentially, Hamlet draws blood on Laertes' side. Only this isn't an actual fight. He's not like getting a bad hit in while Laertes isn't looking. They're actually dueling. And he stabs Laertes with his own sword. The one that Laertes knows is poisoned. Okay. And Osric is like, are you okay, Laertes? And he says, why, as a woodcock to mine own spring, Osric. In other words, I have set up my own death, essentially. I am justly killed with mine own treachery, which is weird. Because that's the thing, he gets stabbed. He doesn't get it like a little flick on his wrist or something. He gets stabbed. I mean, he gets really pinioned and he falls and he goes, I am justly killed with my own treachery. And the Hamlet says, how does the queen? And the king lies. He says, well, she swoons to see them bleed. And she says, no, the drink. Oh, my dear Hamlet, the drink. I am poisoned. So he knows that thing that Claudius put in the drink is poison, and she dies. So here goes, and this is one of those tragedies for Shakespeare that's it's like everybody dies. But so Laertes has fallen. But we know he's going to die. If he's gotten any of the poison, he's going to die. But so's Hamlet because he's been stabbed. At that point, there's nothing you can do. Hamlet's going to die. The queen does die. Hamlet's like, oh, let the door be locked. Villainy, treachery, seek it out. And Laertes admits everything. He essentially confesses. What does that do Catholic-wise? Well, that means he's cleansed of his sins. Why did he do it? For good reasons. He had to avenge his father's death and his sister's death. He thought he was doing the right thing, but he wasn't. But he says, he goes, I poisoned that sword that you're holding right now in your hand. It's unbaited and envenomed. The foul practice hath turned itself on me. And he goes, here I lie, never to rise again. Thy mother's been poisoned. The king's to blame. And the Hamlet says, the point's in venom too, then venom to thy work. And he stabs the king with the poisoned sword. So the king gets roundabout his own karma. And then everybody's shouting, treason, treason. And the king says, oh, I'm but hurt. And he goes, oh, really? He goes, just wait. He goes, here, thou incestuous, murderous, damned Dane, drink off this potion. Is thy union here? And there's no pearl in the bottom because it's dissolved. It's poison. And he forces Claudius to drink the drink too. And then he says, follow my mother. And the king dies. So the king doesn't even get, he just says, oh, yet defend me, friends, I am but hurt. Nope, that's the last line he gets. And he's dead. And Laertes says he's justly served. It's a poison tempered by himself. And he says that publicly. So we all know, wait, the reason the king is poisoned is because he poisoned it himself. And he got Laertes to poison the rapier. And then Hamlet knows. I mean, Laertes says he's justly served. It is a poison tempered by himself. And then he dies too. He says, exchange forgiveness with me. Remember, he admitted, he gave his confession. He says, exchange forgiveness with me, noble Hamlet. Mine and my father's death come not upon thee, nor thine on me. Like, I do not blame you for my death. And I do not blame you for my father's death. Don't blame me for yours. And he says, Hamlet forgives him, which is something his father would you know, he wanted him to forgive his mom, you know, but he forgives Laertes because he knows what Laertes went through. He knows exactly because he's had to go through exactly the same thing. So his understanding of Laertes is really, it's probably far more empathetic than you would expect, especially knowing that Laertes wanted him dead. And then, but he knows, he goes, he says, I follow thee. In other words, I'm going to die soon. And he tells Horatio, I'm dead. He says goodbye to his mom. And then he starts talking to the crowd, who's all like horrified. Had I but time, I could tell you everything. But he says, but let it be. Horatio, I'm dead. Thou livest. Report me and my cause aright. In other words, tell everybody what happened after I'm dead. And Horatio's like, no, I'm more an antique Roman. In other words, I'd rather kill myself and go with you. And he's going to drink some of the potion. And Hamlet is like, don't. He says, as thou art a man, give me the cup, let go. By heaven, I'll have it. He says, what a wounded name, things standing thus unknown, shall I leave behind me? In other words, if no one tells this and what happened, everybody's going to wonder what the heck went on. And I'm going to have a besmirched name. You know, everybody's going to think I'm just a madman. If thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from the felicity, that's the felicity of death, the happiness of death, a while. And in this harsh world, draw thy breath in pain to tell my story. He begs Horatio, please don't die. Stay alive so that you can tell everybody what happened. And then they hear this noise, and it's Fortinbras. And Hamlet even says, what warlike noise is this? And Osric says it's Fortinbras come from Poland, and he's attacked. And he does, in some of the things, it's really dramatic. It is, in Kenneth Branagh's, it's a little too dramatic. It's kind of weird. But Hamlet says, oh, I die, Horatio. The poison quite o'ercrows my spirit. He says he won't live to find out what happened to, did Guildenstern and Rosencrantz die? You know, he won't find out. But I think that probably Fortinbras is going to end up being ruler here. He has my dying voice. So he essentially names him the king. So tell him more or less what happened. And then he says, then he dies. The rest is silence. I don't think if I were to direct it, I'd have him go, oh, 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 oh. I think that's a little, But then Horatio says, you know, he does that "Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing me to their rest," one of my favorite lines in any Shakespearean play. And then Fortinbras comes in. He's like, "What in the heck? I was here attacking, thinking I'd face armies, but everybody's like, it's all like a funeral here. What happened?" And he goes, "Oh well, um, the king is dead, and Hamlet's dead, and everybody died, and there's lots of murder. But I can tell you what happened." He goes, "Okay, well, let's hear it." He goes, "This is really horrible." And he says, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you all the things that happened." And Fortinbras says, "Let 4 captains bear Hamlet." Now, not Claudius, not Gertrude, not any of these other people, not Laertes, but bear Hamlet like a soldier to the stage, for he was likely, had he been put on, to have proved most royal. So Fortinbras, okay, Hamlet recognized Fortinbras's abilities and recognized Laertes and respected him. Laertes, in the end, at least, respected Hamlet's. Fortinbras recognizes Hamlet's as well. Then they're all kind of foils against each other, these three. But who's going to rule? The last person who speaks in the play, and that's Fortinbras. So he will be king after all of this stuff is over. And they will probably bury Hamlet with all the good stuff going on. And Claudius will probably be, you know, become infamous for being a horrible king who murdered his own brother. So that's it. That's kind of where it's going. Do think about the themes, though, the whole idea of madness versus, and then the fakery versus truth. You know, how we put on this courtly visage of what we're doing, and it's all lies. And so, you know, Hamlet is definitely bound up in that. He's afraid everybody's lying to him. And there are times when everybody is lying to him, except for Horatio. Certainly look at those, you know what kind of where their characters are going, the choices that Hamlet's making, and I think you'll be good to go on the test. So let me know if you do have questions once you watch the videos, and I hope you guys have a great summer. This is it for now. So I will see y'all later.